Hola y buenos días. Yo soy el señor Morris. Soy el maestro de español. ¿Cómo están ustedes? Today, we'll start a new unit of instruction called Hábitats de las Plantas. Now, during this unit, we'll look at plants, what makes them grow, and where they grow. Hopefully, you'll already know most of the things that we're going to be learning during this unit, so all you'll have to do is learn the new words for what you already know. Today, we'll review the things that we covered last unit and then examine a plant and its parts. I'll also show you something that I always enjoy doing when I study plants. But let's get started, as we always do, with our opening song. Canten conmigo. Hola, hola, buenos días, bienvenidos, ¿cómo están? Todos juntos ya estamos listos para aprender. Muy bien cantado. Well, I tell you what, let's quickly go over the things that we were talking about last unit. We started off by looking at the relationships within a family. Remember that? Let's go over those real quickly. We said that Rosa es la mamá de Cristina y Manuel, la mamá. Y Damián es el papá de Cristina y Manuel. We said that Cristina es la hermana de Manuel y Manuel es el hermano de Cristina. Cristina es la hija de Rosa y Damián. Es la hija de Rosa y Damián. Y Manuel es el hijo de Rosa y Damián. Luego dijimos que Doña Rosana es la abuela de Cristina y Manuel y de Luisa y Carlos. Y Don Sabino es el abuelo de Cristina y Manuel y Luisa y Carlos. Valeria es la tía de Cristina y Manuel. Es la tía. Y Juan es el tío de Cristina y Manuel. El tío. Luisa es la prima de Cristina y Manuel. Y Carlos es el primo de Cristina y Manuel. Then we looked at the countries where Spanish is spoken, and we said los Estados Unidos de América es un país donde hablan español. That's a country where they speak Spanish. English is not the official language here. We don't have an official language. También España, and we said this was the country where that the language was named for. They speak Castilian Spanish, which is what we're learning, and they also speak Basque and Gallego and Catalan and many languages. But what we study is Castilian Spanish, Español. Then we talked about some of the islands in Central America and the Caribbean. And we'll just go over a couple of those. This long one has a canal going through it. It is Panama. Panama. How about this? And do you remember this? It's just off the coast of Florida. Do you remember? Cuba. It's Cuba. We also talked about this country, and we said there are more Spanish-speaking people in this country than anywhere else in the world. Es Mexico. Mexico. Okay. And we looked at South America, and this was the country where I lived for several years, so I showed you a lot of things from this country. Do you remember the name of it? Paraguay. Paraguay. We also talked about this one where Machu Picchu is located. And this country is Peru. Peru. We talked about this long country that looks like a food that you might eat. Yeah, it's real long and skinny, kind of like a Chile. Chile. We talked about this country, and this is a really well-developed country in South America. And if you go back and trace its roots, the name means silver. Es Argentina. Argentina. And we also looked at this little one right down here where they speak Spanish, and the name is kind of like the country over here. It ends with the same one. Instead of Paraguay, es Uruguay. Uruguay. Muy bien. Now, as I told you, we're going to be talking about plants and things during this unit, so I brought in one of these. Es una planta. Una planta. Now, that word should be pretty easy to recognize because it's almost like the word in English, which means it's a what? If the word's almost the same in English and Spanish, it's a cognate. That's right. Well, I tell you what, let's go ahead and look at the parts of the plant now as we answer this question. ¿Cuáles son las partes de la planta? Do you recognize some other words that are cognates in this question? Partes? Well, I tell you what, let's look at a plant and see what the different parts are called. You might want to go ahead and get out your Spanish notebook to jot these down. First of all, la planta. Es la planta. Okay? And you know what that means, right? Es la planta. That's the plant there. Now, this part that you see colored up here, what do we call that in English? A flower. Y en español es la flor. La flor. And la flor is made up of some different parts. These things around the outside are called what? Petals. Right. Y en español son los pétalos. And see the accent there? Go ahead and jot that down in your notebook. Los pétalos. And that one should be pretty easy to remember, right? Now, right inside there, you see that yellow part? Do you know what grows in there? That's where the seeds come from. And the seeds in Spanish are called las semillas. Las semillas. Go ahead and jot that down, because that word's a little bit different. It's not quite the same as the others. It's not a cognate. Okay? Now, this plant has two of these things growing out the side, and these are called leaves. Leaves, that's right. En español son las hojas. Las hojas. Okay? And that sounds kind of like the word that we use for hoja de actividades, activity sheet. And then this part right down here, do you know what this is called in English? This long, skinny part here? Okay? It's called the stalk or the stem, right? En español es el tallo. El tallo. Okay, and you see the double L there. That's where you get the Y sound. El tallo. El tallo. Go ahead and jot that one down. And the last part of the plant that we're going to talk about is this part down here that's underneath the ground, right? This is where it brings in the water and a lot of the nutrients. What is that in English? The root. En español es la raíz. La raíz. Okay, I hope you guys got a chance to jot those down in your notebooks. Now, as I told you today at the start of the lesson, there's an activity that I always enjoy doing whenever I'm learning or teaching about plants, and the activity is called a leaf rubbing. It's simple enough to do anywhere with a minimum amount of materials. Let me show you. Okay, all I've done is I've taken a leaf, okay, you kind of dry them out and flatten them out, and then you take a piece of paper. Okay, take a piece of paper, lay it over the top. Now you see I've covered up my leaf there, haven't I? Okay, take a pencil or a crayon. Let me see, I want to find out exactly where my leaf is. And then rub over the leaf. And you get an impression of the leaf. Okay, let me show you. See, there's my rubbing, and here's my leaf. Pretty cool, huh? And you get all of the details of the veins and things. Now, you can try different size leaves. I've got a larger one here I'm going to try. You see how you can see all of the veins and everything? Now you can use different colors if you want to. You can use different mediums. What I'm using right now are colored pencils. But if you want to, you can use other things like crayons to get a different effect. Another thing you can do is use different colors of papers. So let me see. I'm going to try one of these leaves. That's just off of one of the plants in my office there. Okay, I'm going to try a different color of paper now. Okay, now I've got blue. I think I'm going to go ahead and go with I'll go with a blue crayon. And let's see how this one works. Okay. Yeah. See how that turned out? And you can use a number of different colors on your paper. You can use different colors on your leaves. And that will give you something that you can use. Maybe you can make a card out of it or make some artwork out of it, whatever you'd like to do with that. And use any sorts of leaves that you have. Yeah, go on out into the schoolyard and find some leaves off trees or bushes. You can use grass, or you can even use pine needles, whatever you want to. Go ahead and be creative and see if you can do something. Now, what do we call a leaf in Spanish? Hoja. And like I said, hoja is also the word that we use for a sheet of paper. And you always hear me say, saquen la hoja de actividades. Hey, well, I tell you what, while I get ready to do our hoja de actividades today, please review las partes de la planta with this video. Ahora, pongan atención y repitan todos. Of the plant. Las partes de la planta. ¿Cuáles son las partes de la planta? Esta es la semilla de la planta. Esta es la raíz de la planta. Este es el tallo de la planta. Esta es la hoja de la planta. Esta es la planta. Esta es la flor de la planta. Este es el pétalo de la planta. Esta es la semilla de la planta. Muy bien. Ahora, la hoja de actividades. Hoy se llama las partes de la planta. Okay, go ahead and start off by escriban sus nombres aquí. Mi nombre es Roberto, R-O-B-E-R-T-O, Roberto. Now, the directions say, write the correct plant part name from the key on the line next to its number. After you finish, color the plant as you wish. think about the names of the colors in Spanish. Well, right down here we can see is the key. Remember these? La hoja, el tallo, la flor, la planta, el pétalo, la raíz, las semillas. Okay, well, let me see here. I happen to know that this whole thing here is called la planta, and that's going to be number 4. So I'm going to start off today by doing number 4 first. Number 4 is la planta. La planta. Now that I have that written, I can cross it off down here. Do you remember the rest of the parts here? Number 3, or number 5 here. Number 5, do you remember what that's called? Yeah, it's like our activity sheet, right? And then number 1 is this whole thing. Number 2 is one of these. And number 3 is what we find right here in the center. Okay, do you remember those? And then this whole thing here. And number 7 are these down here that are underground. Okay, I'm going to let you guys go ahead and finish that up whenever your teacher gives you some time. Well, today we started our unit on plants and plant habitats. We started off by talking about the parts of the plant. I imagine that all of you already knew what all of the parts are called in English, right? Next class, we'll talk about what a plant needs to live. Okay, we'll also be planting some seeds as part of the lesson. So teachers and students, you may want to go ahead and get your materials together for next class so that you can follow along with us and plant a seed. And I hope you guys get a chance to do some of the leaf rubbings like I did today. It's a lot of fun. See if you can identify different plants by what their rubbings look like. Pero saben que ya es hora de despedirnos. For our goodbye song today, let's sing De Colores. And that was the song that I said is so popular in New Mexico. Okay. It's an easy song to sing. Canten conmigo. De colores se visten los campos en la primavera. De colores son los pajarillos que vienen de afuera. De colores es el arco iris que vemos lucir, y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Canta el gallo con el kiri, 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 kiri. La gallina con el cara, 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 cara. Los polluelos con el pío, 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 pío. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. So remember, we're going to be looking at plants. Get your seeds and dirts and cup ready for your next class. Until then, adios y hasta luego.
Bye.